This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night, so call in your questions on anything from car accidents to maybe you've got a question about, it's getting to be the end of the year. If you buy somebody a present and they get injured by the present, are you responsible for that? So maybe it's a tool or maybe it's a bicycle or maybe whatever the newest gadget is. Are you responsible? Call in any kind of question you've got tonight on a legal issue, 256-536-0077. You can call in and be live on the air. You can also text us to that same number, 256-536-0077. We'll have some of your texts tonight. You can also email a question on any legal topic. You send it any day of the week. You send it to lawcall@waaytv.com. And when we get to a show on point, we pull some out. We've got some of your questions tonight. Maybe you've got questions about the cold weather and snow, ice, travel. So we're looking forward to seeing what you got.
Sharon, I have a question about the cold weather.
What you got?
When is it going away?
When is it going away? I think they said midweek.
I'm
Midweek,
ready
but
for it
right
to warm
now it's
back up.
really
It's
unpleasant. And up here on the mountain, it's really unpleasant. William Messervy and Bobby Marsh are in tonight from Timberlake League and Brooks. And while we get some of your calls locked in, we've got tonight's You Make the Law Call video. Okay, a lot of folks getting this time of year. This is something that we pulled off YouTube. Oh, it looked like he had such a great a ladder system set up there, trimming a tree. But when this happens, okay, what if you're the neighbor and it damages your wall? Or what if you hired this guy and he's on your property and gets hurt doing this job for you? And it turns out that he's okay, by the way. We do have the update that he was not a severe injury. Thank goodness. Could have been bad.
I've seen some of these videos on the internet where there's just no way they're okay. There are a lot of videos out there of people getting injured trying to trim trees. And, we've had plenty of folks in our office who are injured trimming trees. If someone's on your property trimming a tree and you've hired them,
okay,
you're not going to be responsible should they get hurt in some normal fashion of what you think about for trimming a tree. Now, if you had a hazard on your property and you didn't warn against that,
okay,
and let's say you had some hole that was covered up and you just failed to mention it to him and that was in his track to go set up his ladder, then sure, you may have some responsibility there. But trees falling can be a different thing.
Absolutely, and that's a common question we get all the time, So really what it comes down to with these tree limb questions is what sort of notice was there to the property owner that the tree limb would ultimately fall? The law on this is very clear. You own your land in Alabama from the soil to the sky, meaning anything that, it reaches over property lines. It doesn't matter if it's underground, above the ground. The Supreme Court has long held that it's yours. So if you have a tree next door or something you're concerned about, we always recommend talk to your neighbor about it. Have that conversation. Tell them, hey, I'm a little bit worried. This limb looks like it may be dying, may fall soon. If your neighbor doesn't seem to be cooperative, if they don't want to take care of the problem immediately, we recommend actually writing them a letter, and taking photographs, documenting this tree limb that you're ultimately worried about. Now, there's no recourse in Alabama where you could legally force somebody to cut a limb that's on their property. Situation's different, though, if it extends over onto your property. If it reaches over onto your land, you're allowed to cut that limb. Also had the question before, well, there's a tree that's actually on my property boundary. Can I cut half of the tree?
Yeah, what do you do then?
Answer to that is no, but you can form an agreement with your neighbor to ultimately take care of that tree. So, long story short, always best have that conversation with your neighbor if you're worried.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the cold weather. So, faucets dripping. We ought to all be leaving our faucets dripping tonight. If you're a renter and you don't do that, or you do, but you don't do it very well, and there's a big leak, pipes burst, can your landlord sue you over that? It could be a big expense, right?
Possibly, or subtract damages from your deposit or whatever it may be. And a lot of it comes down to what is the language in the lease, and if the rental agreement says you have a duty to mitigate certain damages and outlines that in, cold weather type temperatures, you're supposed to leave that warm water going. A lot of times landlords or property management companies will send emails saying, weather's going to be below freezing, please turn the faucet on, then you fail to do it. There could be some liability there. Okay. But a lot of it is driven by the language that's contained within the lease. Now, of course, a renter who's responsible for the utilities is going to be less excited about the prospect of that than one where the landlord is covering utilities.
Okay, talk to us then about, so if I own the land and I have a big pipe burst kind of thing, that's going to get into insurance claims and things, right? Is that going to be flood damage? There's some differences, right, in what you get to claim for your insurance based on what water is coming and how it's getting there.
Absolutely. And so, the easiest way I can explain to someone how a flood claim works against your own homeowner's insurance, and I'm talking from a pipe burst, right? Not a natural disaster. The way it works is if it is a slow over time leak, all right? So drip, 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 and here now I have mold damage. I didn't discover it for 3 weeks, but now there's all this, wet subfloor. That's typically not covered under a homeowner's insurance. It is going to be a sudden pipe burst that is typically covered under homeowner's insurance.
Interesting.
And so a lot of people say, well, the pipe was in the wall. I had no way of knowing it was leaking. But it falls under regular maintenance versus, a sudden pipe burst. And so sometimes those claims could be, pretty dicey because it's going to rely on, testimony from your contractor or whoever's coming in to repair or fix that this was, a burst pipe versus, a slow overtime leak.
Yeah, that one feels almost opposite what I would assume. If it's something that happens big that I could have foreseen, I could have left my pipes dripping, right? It seems like the exact opposite, or something that's hidden behind the wall. I wouldn't know that that's happening, so you would think that's what insurance is for. Exact opposite.
And where we see this sometimes now are with these tankless water heaters.
Yeah.
Some folks have them inside their garage, it's not an issue, but a lot of people have them on the outside of their home. And, those can freeze up. They say, well, I left my water on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't on enough to engage that flame to go all night, right? Or it has some sort of timer in it and it goes for a period and then doesn't.
Yeah.
I think there are some other protections you can put on those, but we've seen that a lot in the past couple of years.
We've got callers waiting. We've got Renee on the line with a question from Harvest. Hi, Renee. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
Hey, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I have an issue with a security service provider that I tried to cancel the service. I called in, and they do the usual where they try to talk you into not canceling and all that. And I was on the phone with them for at least 20, 30 minutes, and every time I said I wanted to cancel, they tried to, give me a reason I shouldn't. And I told them I only have a few minutes left, and then I've got to go. The guy kept talking, so I finally hung up. But I made it very clear that I wanted to cancel the service. Well, they've tried to continue to bill me, and they call, and they call, and they call. And I need to know, what recourse do I have? What can I do to get them to stop? Because it's getting ridiculous. It's like harassment at this point when I ask them to cancel.
No chance you recorded
do?
that conversation, right? No, probably not.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. No, I did not.
Okay.
So, a lot of times you have to look at your contract.
Okay.
Right? And some of these contracts for these security services, require a notice period. And you see a lot of gyms doing this now too.
Yeah.
Right? It's like 90-day cancellation notice, and so you're going to be responsible for 3 more months of dues. It's easier to get out of some apartment leases.
Yes, it is.
Than it is some of these gym memberships and security, camera subscriptions for your doorbell. So, I will tell you this. There are not a lot of people that are afraid of telephone calls, but people are afraid of things in writing. I would send a certified letter telling them that, to cancel your subscription. And that can be, not the easiest, most convenient thing to go do, but that creates a paper trail.
Yeah.
Right? And, there are some governmental agencies you can go to and report this to, but they're going to want to see those receipts. And so, you saying, well, I had a telephone call with Martha on, 21st of November, that's not going to get you very far.
Yeah.
But if you've got, receipts showing the letter that you sent asking them to cancel your subscription, and here's where they signed for it, it went certified, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that gets you a lot further.
We got in a text question asking, if I get married this weekend, I was wondering if I should go ahead and file my taxes as an individual who's single or married. They had questions about whether they could claim married on their taxes if they've only been married for this last part of the year.
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying I don't think anyone up here is a tax lawyer or an accountant. But there are certainly some benefits to filing married,
yeah,
versus individually. Your deduction's larger.
Sometimes we family lawyers will settle a case and we will agree to hold off on filing those papers until after the first of the year. I've got one right now. We're waiting until January to file it because they get better taxes if they're still married at the end of the year, and the deal is already done. So you know that you're locked in. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back answering more of your questions. It's Ask Us Anything night.
Live, presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League and Brooks, featuring the knowledge and experience of attorney Michael Timberlake, attorney Will League, attorney Heath Brooks, attorney William Messervy, and hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back to 31 Law Call. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night, so call in your questions. Be live on the air, 536-0077. You can also text us to that same number. We've got with us William Messervy and Bobby Marsh, both from Timberlake, League and Brooks. They are personal injury attorneys, so that's everything from car accidents to medical mistakes, pharmacy mistakes. We got this email question in from Carter. Carter wrote in, 2 days ago I was rear-ended and my car was totaled. I was taken to the hospital, but not severely injured. My car was old and it's not worth very much. Does insurance consider the cost to replace my car or just the value of the car itself? And will my property that was in the car be replaced? Because I had a computer and a clarinet in the trunk, both of them destroyed. I haven't even had a chance to talk to the adjuster yet. Should I talk to a lawyer first? Lot in that. Okay, where do we start with? The car? What kind of value are you going to get for this car?
So Carter, excellent question, by the way. This is something we hear almost on a daily basis. And the main number we're looking for is what's known as the fair market value of the vehicle. You know, when you're rear-ended or, in any sort of wreck, what they look at is what is the vehicle worth before the wreck, and that's the fair market value. And you can find that by looking at other dealerships around town or any sort of those variables. If the cost to repair the vehicle exceeds 75% of that fair market value, the insurance company will ultimately deem it a total loss. In that situation, the insurance company essentially has to purchase your vehicle from you for that fair market value before the wreck, obviously.
That stinks if you're like me and you drive your car into the ground, right?
Absolutely.
It's
it
worth
does.
more to me than it's worth to them.
And they don't, the law does not consider sentimental value or anything like that. So
Okay.
it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Now,
How about the stuff in the car?
Also a great question. So items that are, damaged or broken in the wreck itself, typically you can't make that claim against your own insurance policy. Your liability coverage covers somebody else if you were to be involved in a wreck and damage their vehicle. However, you may be able to make a claim against the other party's insurance company. And so you make a third-party claim against the other driver's insurance, very well may cover it in that situation.
Okay, his last part of his question was whether to talk to a lawyer first. Okay, this may not be, well, it's a pretty good price tag, might be worth it, and he did have some injuries. In general, should you talk to a lawyer first before you talk to the insurance
So what I always
guys
tell
and
people
gals?
is, look, lawyers that do what we do, we talk to people on the phone all day long, and we're happy to do it. So anytime you have a question, feel free to give us a call and just make sure you understand your rights.
Okay.
I don't
Is there
think
a
it's-
charge for that?
There's not, and
Okay.
I don't think it's something that you would need to hire a lawyer for unless you couldn't reach an agreement over what the fair market value was, or they weren't willing to consider your damaged computer or your damaged clarinet, and just make sure that you can prove your damages, right? So, typically in addition to the car, probably the item most often that has to be replaced are glasses, car seats.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
we see laptops a fair amount, but most people have their laptop in one of these backpacks with the padding.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they survive wrecks pretty well, believe it or not.
Interesting.
But if it's just out on the back seat,
Okay.
but you're going to need to take pictures of it in the car with the broken screen or whatever happened to it, because the insurance company's not going to take your word for it.
Okay. We got this text question in. If you're renting a house to someone, are you responsible if they get hurt on the property with no negligence on your part? So you were talking before about if there's some hidden danger, right? That's one thing. But if you're renting a home to somebody and they just slip on the steps and it's their own fault, are you responsible as the owner?
No.
Okay.
No,
Do you need to
there's
have
no-
special insurance to
There's
protect
no
you?
strict liability.
Okay.
Okay, and so what that would require is what we call strict liability. And typically the only time a homeowner in Alabama is going to see strict liability is if they have a wild animal that they keep as a pet.
Okay.
Alabama does say if you have a wild animal as a pet,
Okay.
there's strict liability for what that animal does.
Okay. You're not even talking about dangerous dogs. You're talking about really wild animal.
I'm not talking about a wild dog.
Okay,
I mean, I'm talking
Pet tiger.
a raccoon.
Okay.
Some
Interesting.
non-domesticated animal that you have deemed to now
Okay.
be domesticated.
Okay.
Snakes of certain types fall under that category. But just because someone is injured on your property does not make them, as the landlord, responsible.
Okay.
Now, if the landlord lets someone move into the house and he knows of a latent defect, like
Rotten floorboards somewhere.
these stairs leading up to the house are rotten,
Okay.
but I just painted this beautiful gray paint right over the top of it,
It looks
so no
fresh.
one will know. And someone steps and falls through that without being warned by
Okay.
the landlord, then there could be liability. But there's going to have to be some form of negligence there, right? And,
Absolutely.
And what's the recipe for negligence?
So in any negligence case, what we're looking for are four main factors, right? You have to prove that there was a duty. So here, talking about a landlord, you have a duty to provide a safe premises to your tenants. Then you have to prove that there was a breach of that duty at some point. After you're able to prove a breach, you're not done yet. You have to prove that breach caused damages. And so, there's different pitfalls and caveats along the way, but those are the main four ingredients for any sort of negligence case like the ones we're discussing tonight.
Gotcha. We've got Jimmy on the line with a question from Pisgah. Hi, Jimmy. Thanks for watching tonight. What's your question?
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Are you ready for my question?
Yeah, let's see what you got.
My daughter got hit by a drunk driver in her car,
Okay.
head on, and her hospital. She had to have emergency surgery on her spleen,
Wow.
ruptured spleen. By the time the lawyers and hospital bill he got about $4,000. He only had $25,000 liability. Will Alabama ever make them increase the liability on these cars?
You know, we've had the same limits for years and years and years, and the dollar's not worth the same. The hospital trip doesn't cost the same. And the only thing, you know, I can do is tell you to reach out to your legislators here in the state and have them increase the limit. We have seen several states increase the limits, but there are some states that still have lower limits than Alabama, believe it or not. But Bobby, what's the best thing you can do in that type of scenario to protect yourself?
So, you know, to protect yourself, whenever you're obviously call the attorney first, you know?
Yeah. You know, then if you're in a situation there where the person who hits you has minimal limits, okay? So in the state of Alabama, what we're talking about is $25,000. That's enough to cover a hospital visit where they deem everything is okay.
Where you're good.
Okay, and a lot of people don't know this, but the hospital is not going to submit that bill to health insurance.
Okay.
They're going to take a lien out on your case, on your claim, because they want to be reimbursed dollar for dollar out of the auto insurance money,
Okay.
not the 20 cents on the dollar that Medicare or Blue
Okay.
Cross Blue Shield will pay.
See?
So you can have all the health insurance in the world and you're still going to be stuck with a massive hospital bill. So really the best thing you can do to protect yourself is make sure you have something called uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. And that is something you purchase through your own automobile insurance. It's part of full coverage. In Alabama, it stacks up to 3 times depending on how many vehicles you have insured.
Okay.
Okay, so even if you had minimal limits of $25,000 but 3 vehicles, you really have $75,000
Okay.
in coverage per person. But that's an easy thing that you can do to make sure that you're protected in a situation like that, because you know, the reality is 3 out of 5 drivers in Alabama are driving around on minimal limits.
Yeah.
1 in 5 has none. And so, you know, 1 in 5 has some higher limit,
Okay.
which could be 50, could be 100, could be 300, could be 500,
Okay.
could be 1 million. But you've got a 4 out of 5 chance of getting hit by somebody with no insurance or, you know, minimal limits. So it's useful, and it doesn't cost much,
Okay.
believe it or not.
Underinsured motorist coverage. We're going to check into
The
that.
biggest expenditure you have is your liability policy, and then collision. Uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, it's not that much more per month.
Small investment that could save you a lot in the long run, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We've got Mary on the line with a question from Athens. Mary, let's see if we can answer your question. We're kind of tight on time. What's going on?
I leased an apartment, and I didn't know it had a roach infestation because it looked clean when I looked at it. There was no sign of roaches. And then after a few days when I moved in, they started coming out of the outlets and in the vents. And then I had an infestation, and I didn't know what to do. I called the landlady. They came back up and sprayed again. But the spray, they would spray about 4 or 5 times and leave, you know, a little squirt.
Yeah, so Alabama law doesn't provide you with a lot of protections there under the Landlord-Tenant Act, but one thing that is very successful, if your landlord is not resolving that problem, that type of problem to your satisfaction, I would call code enforcement. Code enforcement will come out.
Okay.
They will, you know, give the landlord a date certain that he has to, you know, have that remedied by. Now the downside is if they don't, they could condemn the apartment, and then you got to find somewhere else to live.
Okay.
But the threat of having their apartment condemned typically gets the landlord to act pretty quickly.
Okay, good. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back answering more of your questions. Stay with us. and Bobby Marsh with Timberlake League and Brooks in Huntsville, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com. And if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And Sharon Doviet practices everything family law. She's here in Huntsville, 256-539-7337, and you can learn more about her on the internet, www.sharonfamilylaw.com.
You had something going on this weekend. What were you working on this weekend? Family stuff this weekend?
Like usual, yeah, we were at a wrestling tournament. This one's actually from 2 weeks ago. Those are my boys.
How old are your boys now?
They're 6 and almost 11.
Oh my goodness.
And so
wrestling.
Yeah. So that was at Grissom, and we were at a tournament this weekend in Arab. They put on a great tournament. Love those folks over in Arab. They do a great job.
That'll keep you busy.
Yeah.
Love to see what the family's doing. Thanks for all your calls and questions. We'll see you next week.